Hey guys. Yeah, as you can see, I am still in like morning mode. I haven't uh, done my morning routine yet, so yeah, I'm still in my pajamas. It's a lazy Sunday. Anyway, so today's video is not an easy one for me to do, and I just want to say, if you're triggered by domestic violence, then I'd watch this with caution. I don't go into details, but yeah, I just wanted to say that just in case anybody's triggered by it. Um, but I feel like it's such an important thing to talk about because it is very layered in that it has so many. This story feels like it has so many things are that we need to talk about that could be beneficial to people. So I'm just gonna share it, and I hope that it is received with the energy that it is intended with, which is just of love and yeah. I just hope that the message is received. So I'm nervous. Okay. I was looking through my Facebook messages. Not my Facebook messages, my Facebook memories. You know how Facebook shows you your memories from like years ago on the day. So I was looking through my memories and I saw this post that I did where I was talking about how I'm invoking the energy of Kali in my life, the goddess Kali. And that's where I was that time in my life. I was reading this book called Awakening Shakti, which I feel like everybody should read, regardless of what gender you identify with, because we all have both the masculine and feminine aspects within us, and so whatever you identify as, this book can help you access your feminine energy and just like, what's the word, explore it and see all these different parts of it, and yeah. So I'd also like to say that I'm not a person who worships deities of any kind. And what I do feel about gods and goddesses is that they're just representations of divine aspects. And because we haven't gotten to the point where we've cultivated these aspects within ourselves, sometimes it's easier to use an external representation of them. That way, yeah, like use an external representation. It's like they're kind of like a guide for you as you still develop and evolve into a being of higher consciousness. I do feel like we'll get to the place where we'll be able to access these, and to some extent, different people have. I know I've developed some aspects within myself, and that's why I feel like I don't need to worship gods and goddesses, but they can still be representations for me of aspects of myself that I haven't developed. I feel like it's a beautiful way to access the divine. But then I also believe that we are parts of the divine and we're actually holograms of this divine energy. So we have the same traits that our divine source has once we get the awareness of them and once we develop them and use them and flex them and work them out. So until we get to that point, yeah, gods and goddesses are good tools. So Kali is the goddess of change, revolution, and destruction. And destruction meaning destruction of toxic patterns, destruction of the ego's effects on our life, like just like our negative patterns and destructive behavior that we have. Kali is the energy that you can invoke to deal with stuff like that. And she's a very interesting looking goddess. I mean, if you see her, she has like her tongue out with fangs, and sometimes she's depicted with blood around her mouth, and sometimes she's holding a severed head. And she has like a necklace of skulls and like skulls around her waist. She's a very almost terrifying looking like figure. But when I read about her, I was like, she actually is one of my favorite Hindu goddesses because it's such a loving energy, but it's like the destruction of the things that are toxic, and I love that. It's actually a really beautiful energy that you can work with. So at the time when I was invoking this energy, when I was reading the book, I was taking, I think, maybe like 2 weeks with each goddess to invoke their energy and see that effect on my life. And it was so interesting that at this time when I was invoking that energy, I didn't even know what I was calling into my life because here yeah, I saw some things. So I at the point was in a relationship with my ex-partner that I've talked about this relationship before, And it's such a significant relationship in my life. And, you know, now that I've had enough time and healing and distance from the person and from the relationship to, you know, look at, I have really come to a place of gratitude with this relationship because it forced me to face my shit, you know. And when you, sometimes when you're not facing something in your life, things will get worse until you do. And I remember at the point I was in my life, I was feeling very stuck and stagnated. And I didn't know at that time it was because I wasn't facing my wounds and my limiting beliefs and my dysfunction, my inherited conditioning. Like, I was not facing myself. So the situations that I was creating in my life were very toxic situations. And one of the toxic things in my life was, one of the most toxic things was this relationship. And it was just simply a mirror for the dysfunction that was happening in my life that I wasn't facing. And that is something that I've seen in life. I even look at challenges different now, because if something is in my experience and it is a challenge, I now look at it as a representation. It's just like a mirror of what I'm not facing, of something that I need to heal, of something that I need to look at. So I learned through that relationship that if you don't face, it just keeps getting worse and worse, and life keeps trying to get your attention. So in that time in 2015 in June, somehow when I was visiting my partner because they worked out of town, I went to visit them, and just through some crazy serendipitous situation, I get this information that my partner is being deceptive. And it was shocking and enraging for me. I was so enraged, just because we had broken up the year before as well, and it was for other reasons, but also a situation that was a bit similar to what I was witnessing now in 2015. And it was just like, I couldn't believe I was in this situation. I was very angry. And so this is the part that's hard for me to share. I ended up being physically abusive. I physically assaulted my partner. And, you know, I've done a lot of work around this particular issue. I've spoken about it a little bit online as well, on my Facebook page. I think years ago, I talked about it, because I felt like it was important for me to share the story, just as for my personal, you know, healing, to take responsibility also for my behavior, but also just as a way to have a conversation about this, because I feel like we have to create non-judgmental spaces for healing to occur. That's something that I have known with myself, with my toxic behavior. I have known that if I do not deal with it in a place of non-judgment and compassion, then I will not completely and fully do the work that I need to do to be able to move past my behavior. So within like the 2 years that I have been out of that relationship, I have really, really worked on myself. I've really healed a lot of things. Even before then, I had already started the work, but I really dove deep into it after that relationship ended in 2017. And when you look at situations in your life like that, when you're able to see them as an opportunity to heal rather than as tools to use to judge yourself and to wallow in and to criticize yourself, then I feel like it's a more beneficial space that you can be in. Because if you're going to use your behavior as something to judge yourself for, then you're never really going to be able to get out of it, because it creates a shame spiral where you just keep going deeper and deeper into shame, and you never really deal with the situation. So when I had to face that aspect of myself, it also brought in, I was humbled, you guys. Humbled, because when you see that darkness, that level of darkness within yourself, you realize that you're not different from other people. People who used to sit on on your moral high horse and judge, like, I am no better than anybody. Like, even these days, I still catch myself judging people, but I really, have gotten to the place where I'm like, who am I to stand in moral judgment of anybody else when I have seen what I am capable of. Yeah, it humbled me. And it also got my attention in a way where I had to be like, okay, there's something here I'm not dealing with. Because up until that point, I had never in my life been a violent person. Even with my sisters, we would fight when we were kids, but then it was never really violent. I had only slapped maybe like one person, I think two people. Like I had never really, and I think I'd had two incidents where I'd slapped people, and I think one of them was in primary school, and a teacher made me do it because a boy was telling me lewd things, and she found out, so she made me slap him. But I had never really been a violent person. So to see that kind of rage come out in that way was a wake-up call for me. I was just like, this feels like a different person. I felt like I had faced a monster, like I had seen a monster within myself, and I was like, I need to, whatever this has come from, I need to look at it. And that became now my like I've started looking at myself, and that started a journey, of healing within myself. So, and yes, we talked about it with my ex-partner. I apologized, I took responsibility. We talked about how I had to find better ways to communicate. But I mean, it's still a part of myself that I'm just like, which is why even these days, even in romantic situations after that, if we're ever in a place of conflict, I am so careful that, if I feel like I am getting angry, I say that I need space, and I take my time to deal with that anger and express it away from the person, just because I never want to catch myself in that situation again. That shit really scared me. Anyway, I digress. So invoking the Kali energy for me at that point was not even to do so much with my partner and their behavior. It wasn't even so much about the abusive behavior that I, was engaging in. For me, it was the underlying issue, because all those two things were just mirrors. My partner's behavior was simply a mirror for my own toxic behavior within myself, which is why it could exist. And my violent behavior was simply an outpouring of this toxic energy that was within myself. And I'm not trying to trivialize it. I know the importance of that behavior, and I know, I'm not trying to trivialize that at all. But it was like the physical manifestation of what was already happening with my emotional state, my mental state, my spiritual state. There was stuff that I wasn't facing, because as much as my partner's behavior was hurtful, for me to go to that extreme wasn't about his behavior. That was mostly about my own toxicity and things that I wasn't facing. And so I had to start looking at that. And that is what I felt like that Kali energy was uncovering for me. I felt like that was the beginning of a lot of changes in my life. Interestingly though, 2 years later, almost exactly 2 years later, we found ourselves with my partner, because we got back together at the end of 2015. I found we ended up in the exact same place with the same problem, but I don't think I will ever really fully talk about that breakup in 2017, just because it involves a lot of information to do with my ex, and I don't feel like that's fair. So yeah, that's my story to share with my people, and not on a platform like this. But it's just interesting how, and this 2017 one was much worse. So it's very interesting how when you don't face your shit, like I said earlier, it'll come back, and it'll come back in an even bigger way. Oprah said it so amazingly in the last episode that she did of the Oprah show, the talk show. She talked about how life tries to get your attention when you need to deal with something. And at first it'll be a gentle nudge, and it'll be a stronger nudge, and then it'll be just like a pat on your head. And then if you're not paying attention, like life will smack you up the head, like you need to face this shit. And I feel like that's what happened, in this situation. Yeah, so I just wanted to share that, and hopefully bring attention to the fact that we need to look at our pain, we need to look at our wounds, and we need to heal them. Otherwise, we continue to perpetuate cycles in our lives that are destructive and that are harmful and that pour out onto other people. And one thing that I realized for the first time, which shocked me in 2017, is that I didn't need to live in pain. I honestly had not fully grasped that as an idea. My pain had become so normal to me that I felt like this was just going to be how I would be for the rest of my life. But realizing that I can actually heal and move into healthier places and become a better version of myself, to be able to be like, I can grow, I can change, I can exist in love, I can exist in joy. That has been something that I have been working to put in as a reality in my life for the past 2 years. And I just want to say the same thing to you, because I feel like, especially in our culture, there's a certain amount of emotional dysfunction that's normalized. This is how women are, this is how men are, this is how relationships are, this is how marriages are. Like, we've normalized pain and dysfunction when we don't have to. We can have lives that are full of love and joy, and yes, challenges, but they don't have to be painful to the point that's distracting, that's like taking away our peace. We don't have to live in dysfunction. We don't have to be afraid of love. We don't have to be afraid of joy. That doesn't have to be our norm. We can rise above that, and I feel like that's really what I wanted to communicate in this video. I don't want this video to be long. I've been doing such long videos lately, so I just want to end it here. And I want to say, please look at yourself. Just face yourself and try and do it in a space of non-judgment and compassion for yourself. And also hold space for people like that as well. Hold space of non-judgment and compassion, and allow people to face themselves with you, if you can. Hold space for people that's non-judgmental, so that, we can create spaces of healing for each other, because we have to face our shit. And the only way to do that effectively is if we're not in a shame spiral. I hope this has made sense. Thank you so much for watching. You can find me on social media, Tarudi Gatere, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I'm sending you so much love. And please remember, above everybody else, you deserve your own unconditional love and acceptance. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.